Today we're going to be going over everything that you need to know about standard rotation. Alright guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different than normal, and that's because we're going to be going over standard rotation. And the reason why I'm making this video for you guys today is because with all the new changes in Magic, with standard sets being legal now for 3 years and with more set releases throughout the year, standard rotation has gotten complicated even for me, somebody who plays the game every single day. And so I figured I could just make a quick little guide for everybody on what to expect from standard rotation going forward. And before I jump into my 4 main topics I have planned today, let's just talk about what standard rotation even is for the newer players real quick. So with Magic the Gathering, every single year, they take their oldest sets and they rotate them out of standard, making them illegal. You can't play those sets anymore. That way it shakes up the meta for standard. And that way, you know, the powerful decks that are kind of on top get shaken up a little bit and makes things a little bit more refreshing. It also makes room for the newest sets coming into standard throughout that year, making it a lot more refreshing and fun for the players. Now, those old sets can still be used in older formats like Historic and Brawl, but they're just no longer standard legal. And so with that out of the way, let's talk about my 4 topics we're going to be going over today in standard rotation and what to expect. So the first thing we're going to be talking about today is going to be which sets are actually rotating and becoming illegal to play in standard and when that is going to happen. And then up next, we're going to talk about the meta decks of past and present that are going to be mostly affected due to the loss of playable cards. And then we're going to talk about cards that aren't specifically to any sort of meta, but are generally just super powerful and have been around for a long time. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about the dual land debacle is what I'm calling it, because the lands are going to get a little bit weird moving forward. Let's just say that. All right, so first up, let's talk about the when, guys. When is this actually going to happen? Well, standard rotation is going to take place with the release of Edge of Eternities. This is going to be the newest set release coming up very shortly on July 29th on the Arena client. And that's when you're going to see rotation take effect and all these older cards drop off and no longer be playable. Now, let's talk about which cards those are going to be and which sets are actually going to become illegal moving forward. So first up, we have Dominaria United. And then after that, we've got Brothers War. And then Phyrexia All Will Be One, March of the Machine, and March of the Machine Aftermath, which is a bit of a subset of that March of the Machine. But those are going to be the sets that are no longer standard legal. Those are going to be rotating out moving forward, and you will no longer be able to play those in standard. But again, those are still going to be legal cards that you can play in Historic, Brawl, and all those other formats that don't have, you know, actual rotations. All right, now for the fun part of the video, in my opinion, which is where we dive into the old meta as well as the current meta, and we're going to see if any of these deck lists that were super powerful in the past or currently, how they're going to be affected by the standard rotation. Are they going to be shaken up? Are they going to lose a ton of cards? Are they no longer going to be viable? So we're going to take a look at these and we're going to find out right now. And up first, we have Dimir Midrange, guys. And right now, Dimir Midrange is the current meta leader with 24.7% shares of use on the ladder, according to MTG Goldfish as my source here. And that's a lot, guys. That's definitely by far the most popular meta deck currently. Now, I've got a list of cards here that could affect this deck moving forward in rotation. And I say could affect because every deck's going to be different. Everybody likes to use different types of removal spells and things like that. But these are some of the key role players that we've seen in Dimir Midrange throughout the past of its, you know, history in standard. But we got some big losses, especially in the removal category, guys. We've got Cut Down. Cut Down is just one that I think a lot of people in general are going to be worried about moving forward. And a lot of reasons is because it's in a lot of different deck lists. It's Dimir Midrange, it's Mono Black, it's in Golgari Midrange. There's a lot of deck lists that want Cut Down right now, and it's been really good for so long because Mono Red, you know, it was rampant for so long. And now that, you know, we've had some bans like Monstrous Rage and stuff, it's not going to be as relevant, but it's a very good card. It's by far one of the best removal spells we've had in a long time in standard, and to lose it is going to be a big loss for a lot of people, but especially Dimir Midrange. We've also got Fairy Mastermind. Fairy Mastermind is a very much a cornerstone of this deck list. In fact, it's used for most thumbnails, and even on MTG Goldfish, they've got Fairy Mastermind as the, you know, picture card because it's the card that you play on turn 2 as Flash. It can be used to, you know, ninjutsu in your Kaito because it's got flying. It's very elusive. It adds card advantage when your opponent's drawing cards. It's very, very good. A very good card that I think is going to be very tough to replace for the Dimir decks. But again, just a lot more removal than anything. We've got Anoint Affliction on the way out. This card isn't as popular in my opinion right now because we did lose Heartfire Hero, which was one of the main reasons this card was ran. It's a card that can exile things off the battlefield. There are some really important cards that you don't want going to the graveyard anymore though, because there's a Cauldron deck that's number 2 right now sitting on the meta list for 17%. It's becoming very popular and in my opinion is probably going to be the next big meta deck. And there's things that you want to go to the graveyard and you want to exile them with the Cauldron to get the effects. So Anoint the Affliction is actually really good for taking care of that because it does exile. And then 2 other really good removal spells is Go for the Throat and Sheoldred's Edict. 2 just very good removal pieces that do a lot for you. I mean, Go for the Throat is probably one of the better 2 mana instant speed removal spells. Typically with these removal spells, they always have a taxed on like downside, and this one being that it can't be an artifact creature. Now there's not a lot of decks that, you know, have artifact creatures. The Simulacrum deck for sure is out there, but for the most part, most creatures are not going to be artifact creatures. And so this was one of the best 2 mana instant speed removal spells you can have. And then Sheoldred's Edict, the ability to attack planeswalkers with this really helps a lot in my opinion. I think this card is going to be a big loss, but not the biggest of losses for Dimir midrange. So ultimately Dimir midrange, they're losing a lot. I still think it could be a deck. I mean, you might be able to replace the Fairy Mastermind in a 2-drop slot and then add other removal that we might be getting from, I don't know, Edge of Eternity's Beyond. We don't know what sort of removal spells are down the road, but I'm sure we're going to get some replacements for these removal spells. So ultimately, I see Dimir midrange coming back, probably not right away, but once we start, filling in some of those removal slots with other set releases, hopefully moving forward, Dimir will be back. But ultimately, I think right now, you'll see a bit of a drop for sure. You'll see a bit of a drop. It definitely won't be the number 1 deck list. I do have Izzet Cauldron, in my opinion, becoming the next big thing because that's not really losing anything. So that's my take on Dimir midrange. Up next, we got Mono Red. Not a whole lot to talk about here. Right now, Mono Red is pretty much non-existent in the meta shares. I don't see it pretty much anywhere on the boards here, but Gruul aggro, it does have a little bit of the meta share here. We're looking at 5%. It's like number 5 on the list right now. But we've only got 2 cards really that Mono Red's losing here because in my opinion, they already lost their biggest threats with Monstrous Rage and the Heartfire Heroes, the bans that we recently had. But they are losing Monastery Swiftspear, which in my opinion is huge because this not only hurts the mono red decks, but there's a lot of prowess decks out there in the colors of Izzet that also want the Swiftspear. Obviously that deck got kind of dismantled a little bit too with this town ain't big enough being, taken out. But Swiftspear losing Swiftspear in red right now. Red, it can't afford to take any more hits. So this one is a bit of an issue, but Gruul is the only colors right now using the Swiftspear. Other than that, Gruul's not really losing too much. So not a big hit. But then we've also got the Scamp as well. And this kind of, I put on the list. Some people might just be completely ignoring this card, but right now there's a lot of really good fling decks. There's a lot of decks that are trying to, plot the, Slick Shot Show Off, and they're trying to get the Scamps down and they're trying to pump these things really big and then, fling them at the face of the opponent because they can basically trigger twice. It has a dying trigger and it has the trigger of actually being flung at the opponent. So this card is actually super problematic to deal with. I've been beaten by this card by turn 3 still. I mean, a couple days ago. So these 2 cards are a pretty big loss in my opinion to mono red. It is, as far as mono red goes though, it's already kind of a dying breed at the moment. You never know, it might come right back. It always does. But for right now, mono red, not too much going on. All right, up next, we've got Boros Convoke. Now, I'm only bringing Boros Convoke up here because this was an older formatted meta deck that was kind of dominant for a very long time, and because of all the recent bans, it's back, man. It is right behind that Gruul deck I was just talking about. It's got about 4.8% of the meta shares, and it's growing, man. It's coming right back, but we've also got huge losses in this one. Some of the key role players of this deck, we've got Knight, Errant of Eos. This card has been the whole reason why they even call this deck Boros Convoke, is because this is one of the only Convoke cards in the deck, and it's basically their card engine. Basically, a lot of decks rely on card draw to keep the cards, flowing in the hand and never running out of juice. This card right here is a good way to just basically get your entire board within range of lethal. And then you convoke this onto the battlefield, refill your hand with a bunch of creatures. And then, if your opponent does happen to have that miracle sweeper, at least you didn't lose out on too much value because you can, reduce your hand. This is a very important card to the deck, basically why it's called to convoke in the first place. So kind of a big deal. And the only reason why it's good at convoking is because of cards like Lethal Demolition, which, you could sacrifice something, create these goblin tokens, and then you have a bunch of bodies that you can then tap to convoke with. Gleeful Demolition, another very, very important card to this deck, because typically you start off by investigating and then you hit that investigation clue token with this and you get the ball rolling. And now there's even that card that's an artifact creature that leaves behind an artifact creature. So just a lot of craziness with this deck. I don't think this deck's going to be viable at all moving forward, because these are just two very, very important pieces that I think they can't live without. So unfortunately, I think Boros Convoke might be dead. All right, up next, guys, we're going to be talking about Domain. And I do know that Domain hasn't been good for a little while now, especially with the banning of Beanstalk. It's been a bit of a non-factor, but this is a deck list that has terrorized Standard quite a bit. It's been in the meta, out of the meta, back into the meta. It's just one of those deck lists that you can't seem to kill. But I think with the loss of Beanstalk, it's already been killed. But there are some cards in this deck, like Leyline Binding, that have been viable in other builds. Anything running a Hauntwoods is going to be running Leyline Binding 90% of the time, because it activates for 1 mana flash if you've got the 5 colors on the board, which is a simple Hauntwoods trigger. And they always seem to have it on curve too, by the way, but it's super weird. But anyways, Leyline Binding being out of the meta is kind of a big deal. This is going to be a very big hit for a lot of decks, but Domain especially, because this was the reason why they called it Domain, is because of cards like this. It has an actual domain ability that people like to exploit. We've also got Zur, which is kind of the win con of the deck. Not having a Zur to close out the games is pretty much, a death sentence as well. They're just not going to be able to close out games, which means the deck isn't going to, win hypothetically. And then we've also got Temporary Lockdown going out. Now, I put this in Domain. It's not always in a Domain deck, but it's part of the old Domain strategies. Temporary Lockdown is just... it's a really sad card to see go, because this is going to be something that, in my opinion, is going to be really hard to replace. I hope they reprint it maybe down the road. I don't know how that's going to work, but Temporary Lockdown is just really good, because in the best of one especially, there's a lot of decks that win by turn 3, by turn 4. Nowadays, it's a lot of Reanimators, so it doesn't matter. But, with the mono red decks and the go wide strategies early, like Rabbits, this was a card that could keep those things in check, and just you don't have those games where, where it would normally be a non-game because you would never get to turn 4 to play your Day of Judgment or your Wrath. Temporary Lockdown was a really good answer for that. And it kept things like Pixie Bounce and stuff in check too. Obviously, it was tough when it got bounced by This Town Ain't Big Enough, but it did a lot. It took more than just creatures is what I'm getting at. And it was really, really good. And I'm really sad to see that one go. And then Sunfall and Archangel of Wrath, 2 cards that are not really played anymore, but within Domain, they were really good back in the day. They were just, Archangel of Wrath was a huge, game changer to swing the game's life total completely to one side. And then Sunfall, Sunfall is not being used again right now too much. But again, in Mono White though, Mono White's been bringing Sunfall back with the incubation token drawing cards. So Sunfall may be having a comeback here. So to see it go now is unfortunate, but Domain pretty much unplayable in my opinion. Up next, we're going to be talking about the Roots deck, man, the Golgari Roots deck. Not a lot going on here, but it's not a lot, but it is a lot at the same time. And what I mean by that, there's only really 2 cards that I've seen Roots playing, and one of them being Ren. It's not a card that's typically played in Roots, but can be, and I've seen it in a couple of different builds. But this, there's only 2 cards going. There's only 2 cards going out of the Roots deck, and the second one being Tyvar makes it kind of a big deal, because Tyvar, in my opinion, without Tyvar, it's a bit of an engine. Like you're losing the ability to tap your plant tokens at haste speed to generate that mana. And a lot of what this deck is trying to do is be really explosive with Tyvar and basically unloading your entire hand in a single turn. So it's going to be really, really difficult to do things like that now without Tyvar. It's going to be impossible to generate that mana as fast as you normally do. So you're going to see a big hit, in my opinion, on the Roots deck. And it's kind of sad because it's starting to make a comeback right now. And I feel bad for the Roots players because without Tyvar, I just don't know if it's going to be as viable. I think it's going to be a great deck still. I think it's going to be, B tier, maybe low A tier, but it's not going to do what it needs to do most of the time, which is unload your entire hand really fast and be super explosive. So not a lot being lost as far as how many cards we have here in Roots, but some pretty key role players in Tyvar. Ren, again, not super key here, but I have seen some people play this card and generate a lot of value out of it, especially if you can't answer this card. If they keep plussing it and get to a -7, it makes that Roots deck basically unstoppable. So Ren and Tyvar, big hits for the Roots deck. I still think the Roots deck will be playable. It just won't be nearly as explosive. All right, guys, this next one's a bit of a 2-for-1 because we're going to talk about two different decks here because there's some cards that are going to affect both. We're talking about Dino Reanimator and then the Unlimited Discover deck where you get to turn 5 and you basically win the game because it discovers endlessly. Let's just start out by saying thank God these decks are gone because I am so tired of these turn 3, turn 4 wins. And then also the Discover deck, in my opinion, it's so brainless. I'm so glad they're gone. I really, really am. But the main card in both is going to be this Atali. I'm glad Atali's, out of standard. I love this card. I genuinely, when this came out, played this card probably more than anybody. But that's back when it was kind of fair and I could, ramp to it or, try to flip it. But now it just seems like it's being used for every turn 3, turn 4 reanimation. And it's just causing too much value on those turns that it's making these decks pretty unstoppable and hard to beat, especially in best of 1. So Atali being out of the picture is going to stop both of those decks from being viable. As far as the Discover deck, they're losing Scroll Shift, thank goodness, because this is kind of the main piece here. You discover down to a Scroll Shift and then you just keep blinking in that new enchantment that allows you to discover, or it doesn't even discover, it searches your deck for something of mana value and puts it on the battlefield. But you know what I mean. This card right here is kind of the engine of that deck, and I'm glad it's gone because hopefully we will stop seeing that deck list. And then we've also got Invasion of Ergamon. I don't know how to say that. This is going to take away that turn 3 viability from the Dinos deck. Dinos could still be good. I will say out of the two deck lists, I think Dinos has the better chance of survival here. But this is a really important piece because a lot of times with those Dino decks, they're trying to pull off the reanimation by turn 3 because of this Invasion. And this Invasion coming down, dropping a card, getting a treasure, generating that extra mana to then, turn 3, you zombify. I'm glad this is gone. It's too fast, too furious, and I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. And then Bitter Reunion. This going out of the meta is kind of a big deal too because a lot of reanimation decks really love this card strictly because once you reanimate, let's say you have 5 mana and you zombify, to be able to pay 1 to give everything haste kind of breaks any sort of reanimator deck because there's a lot of really good things like Rotten Mouth Viper that I've done in the past that have an attack trigger. So to be able to attack right away, this kind of makes for the best possible 2 mana like discard and draw something, you know what I mean? As far as value goes, this had the best value out of all of them because it had that haste attached to it. Because I mean, what's better than reanimating a bomb on turn 4? Well, can it attack right away? You know what I mean? It's really, really good. So I do think that the Dino Reanimator deck taking much lesser of a hit out of the two. You can set up all these other dinos in a million different ways. You don't necessarily need to do it by turn 3, which was ridiculous anyway. So I'm glad it's a little bit more fair, but you can still get everything in by turn 4. And the only thing you're missing is that Atali, which is a big hit for sure. But you can replace that with another dino and still kind of go crazy with what you currently have, like the Galtas and stuff. So anyways, those are my 2 takes on that. I hope the Discover deck dies and the Dino deck gets a little more fair. All right, up next, we're talking about a deck list that I wish already would have died, and it kind of has for the most part, but I've been seeing it lingering in the shadows. A few crazy people are still running it that are testing my patience, but we're talking about Omniscience, guys. Omniscience, Reanimation. Now, I know you guys know Abuelo has been banned, so this deck has kind of fallen off as like a top 1 or 2 deck lists, and it's no longer that viable, but there are some crazy people out there running Repair and Recharge as an Abuelo supplement, and they've replaced it with this. It's basically just 1 extra turn you add to the mix, and you do the exact same thing. Repair and Recharge reanimates the enchantment from the graveyard to the battlefield, and then you get to go off with your Omniscience. And this is only 1 mana more than the Abuelo, and so I've seen people running it. And it's really annoying because I really was hoping that Omniscience would die after the bans, but it didn't. So now we need rotation to save us. And we've got the Invasion of Arcevios. I've never really known how to say this card's name, but this is another card that I think with this rotating out is going to completely turn the Omniscience deck. As far as reanimating it back to the battlefield, it's going to take that off the table of any value because this is the card they need to hit off of the Omniscience in order to go look into their deck or their sideboard to find Season of Weaving, to bounce it, to redo it over again. They do this sort of cycling thing over and over and over again to go infinite. You guys know the drill. Once Omniscience hits the field, it's super boring and long, and it takes forever for them to close out, but it does go basically until the game ends, and they never miss it because of this card right here. And so I'm really glad this card is going, because to be able to search your sideboard and stuff is just too powerful, especially when you can search your graveyard too, and then, pull it back, and it just gets really annoying. And then we have the Dispersal. Dispersal is a really good bounce spell that, in my opinion, I wish would stick around a little longer, because I feel like people are just now seeing the value in this card, including myself, because of the Omniscience deck. But the ability to bounce something for 1 and then Surveil 2 is really good with graveyard decks too. So I'm actually really sad to see this go. I've been using it a lot lately, especially in decks that I want to fill the graveyard with. It's a really good interactive piece that also pushes forward your game plan of filling that graveyard. So Omniscience, hopefully officially dead. We'll never see that sort of combination ever again after standard rotation, but sad to see the Dispersal go. So that's a bummer. All right, guys, we've come to the third part of the video where we're going to be talking about the more generalized powerful cards that haven't necessarily been narrowed down to one specific meta deck, but have been used in a lot of different builds for value. Some of these cards very, very powerful. Some are kind of powerful, but think of this like an honorable mention section, and some of these cards being very, very honorable, like Atraxa. Atraxa is one of those cards that, in my opinion, super happy it's leaving the format, because it generated value for a lot of different engines, like the Omniscience deck, where it can go search out and set up all your infinite ending combos where you can find the cards that you need to pull off everything you need. I think this card is a little too powerful, did a little too many things. I thought it was really cool when it first came out, played with it a lot myself, and saw the value in it for sure. But I am kind of glad it's gone. I feel like people have exploited it for too long and done too many just absolutely gnarly things with this, with the Omniscience builds, reanimation builds, and even domain decks had this card in it at some points. But Atraxa, very good card, obviously, and I think a lot of decks are gonna miss that one. Up next, we got Shieldred. I think a lot of you guys are going to be pretty happy this is gone. I never really cared too much for it, but it was one of those cards that at one point dominated the format in mono black, and was in everything that had black in it. We had Dimir, Golgari decks. Everything had Shieldred in it. It was super oppressive for a long time, but kind of fell off a little bit. But still a very good card that we're losing in Standard, and I'm going to be pretty sad because it's a card I have. I have the Phyrexian version. Phyrexian riding version of this card, and I know it's going to drop big time in value, so there's that. But super cool card that we're losing, that I think a lot of people are pretty happy about. And Archfiend to Dross. Demon decks are going to lose the Dross. It's not really played in a whole lot more than the Demons deck, but I couldn't make a whole category for Demons just because they're losing to Dross, but the Dross is a pretty big piece and needs to be replaced. But unfortunately, we have Bloodletter of Aclazot still. I think you just take out the Dross, put that in every Demon deck, and you're fine. I think most people run the Bloodletter only if they're running the Slasher to try to get that one-shot combo, but it's a fine replacement for the Dross in the more mid-rangey type decks. And then we've got Jace. Azorius Control is really going to hate losing Jace, but I mean, Jace is one of those cards, again, I'm glad it's going. I hate being milled out. Who doesn't hate being milled out? But I like milling people, so I have a hard time wanting to let this one go. Just something about Jace, I never really played him. I never really liked the way he won games. It was just a little bit too basic and corny for me to play and just -5 and just win the game. I like to do mill combos that are a little bit more tricky and fun, and a little bit, not as easy to pull off. You play a Planeswalker, you -5, you win, whatever. I know there's more setup than that, but Jace, I'm kind of happy it's going. Azorius Control is going to be fine though. They're going to have a lot of different win cons. There's some new creatures that came out that give you protection from everything. I mean, there's other mill strategies coming out with gaining life, so Azorius is going to be fine. I think Jace leaving isn't going to hurt too much. And then Glissa, another card that kind of middle of the road. It got used a lot in Golgari midrange, not so much anymore. But it is still a very powerful card that does a lot for the mid-range package. The Forge. I think this card leaving is a pretty big deal. I've been seeing a lot of Boros Tokens decks coming back where they run the United Battlefronts and the Sweeper packages. Urabrask's Forge is a very powerful card that saw a lot of play in different sort of builds and shells. It would be off and on whether or not this was good or not good in the meta for the time being. But I think it's a very cool card that... we exploited it quite a bit and broke it a few times with extra attack steps. I had a lot of fun with this card. I'm going to miss it. This is one that kind of hurts to see it go. And then Liliana of the Veil. Obviously, it's been a staple for years and years and years. It's a reprint. People love this card, and I think it generates a lot of value for turn 3, you remove something, and then you just keep attacking the opponent's hand. It's pretty ridiculous. Mono Black's going to miss this for sure, but it's not something that gets ran in every single Mono Black deck these days, so not a big deal. Then we got the Core. The Core is a card that every Sacrifice deck has been running. Anything that has Raise the Past has been running, and it's very important for that plan. So I wonder how Raise the Past is going to look moving forward without this. There's plenty of other things that ping the opponent, but this was definitely one of the better ones. And it was really good for the life gain package as well. Orzhov life gain, really like this card. How's it going, everybody? Future Swayze here. Just wanted to let you know that past Swayze here didn't know that Elspeth Smite actually got a reprint in Foundation, so it's actually not going to be rotating out of Standard. So we're going to go ahead and skip this part to save myself the embarrassment, and on to the next category. All right, guys, now we're going to get into the very complicated, convoluted land discussion. This is very complicated for a lot of reasons. I'm going to try my best to, describe what's going on here. But with rotation coming around, dual colored lands are going to get a bit weird here, guys. And the reason being is because if you guys don't know, there's allied colors and there's enemy colors as a way to describe different color groupings. The allied colors, are here on the left-hand side. I've tried to keep them here for you. And then the enemy colors are here on the right. Orzhov being an enemy color, Azorius being an ally color, right? And so, as you can see, one side has more lands than the other. These are cards that are rotating out, by the way, and there's a reason for this. It's because typically with Magic, they release their sets. They'll give you the dual lands that they're releasing with that set that are rare, and they'll give them to you in half groupings. You're going to get either the allied colors or the enemy color ones, and then the following set, whatever, you get the opposite, whatever. But there's been some weirdness with this and how the rotation's working, because as you can see on the allied side of things with Azorius, you're going to lose the pain lands, which are the tap down and they deal damage to you if you use a color. You're also losing the fast lands, which come down untapped unless you have 3 or fewer lands. Now, as you can see on this side, you're only seeing the pain lands, and that's because the second half of the fast lands came out in Thunder Junction. So you're only going to see the Thunder Junction lands that are not rotating, meaning that the enemy colors are going to see less of a hit here, making them a much better, they're going to be much better off going forward with making multicolored decks, because you're going to have that additional option of having those fast dual lands that these allied colors are no longer going to have. So there's a little bit of a lopsided discrepancy there, which makes things a little bit tricky, especially because with the release of the new set, with Edge of Eternities, they're releasing some of these shock lands back into Standard, which I'm so grateful for. They are amazing lands that come in, and you can choose whether they're tapped or not, but you have to take 2 damage if you choose for them to be untapped. And they are actually technically counted as, their basic types as well, making Verges really good. So I'm super excited for these coming into Standard. But as you can see, the colors are a mixture between allied and enemy, making this even more convoluted, because there are going to be some colors that are going to be super well off with every land that we possibly could have, and then other ones that are going to be really not well off because they lost everything from the standard rotation and they're not getting a shock land. And then you've got some in the middle where they lost some, they're gaining the shock lands, or some that are getting the shock lands, whatever. There's going to be a lot going on to where certain deck lists are going to have a much better way of generating mana than others. Like for instance, Azorius is going to take a pretty big hit at generating mana, and then because they're losing both their lands, as opposed to Orzhov, which is only losing one of their lands, and some of them are getting their shock lands and some are not. And so again, it just gets really weird. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but some decks are going to have a ton of lands to choose from when building deck lists. Some are going to have very minuscule, and some are going to be kind of floating in the middle until they release a new set that's going to give us the other half of the shock lands. And even then the enemy side for a whole year and a half is going to be looking a lot better, because they never lost their fast lands, so they're always going to have those to choose from. But anyways, that's the land situation. A little bit strange. Hope that made sense. I didn't explain that the best. I definitely could probably reshoot that, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do a better job than that. And then the last 2 things I want to talk about is Plaza of Heroes and Blast Zone. We're losing both of those. Mono Black loves Blast Zone, so they're going to be taking a hit there. And then Plaza of Heroes I wanted to talk about, because it kind of sucks that we're losing this card with Final Fantasy's release, because Final Fantasy came out with so many good legendary creatures and creatures that, want legendary interactions with their creatures. And so Plaza of Heroes going out of Standard is kind of tough, and I think that's bad timing for that. But hopefully we get another land like Plaza of Heroes. Maybe we did. I didn't even actually look at the new lands from Edge of Eternities. We might actually even get a reprint. I don't even know. So who knows? Moving forward, we'll see if Plaza of Heroes comes back. It might. I might be just not even paying attention to that and be wrong. But anyways, I just want to talk about those lands, and the land situation seems a bit crazy. All right, guys, that's my take on standard rotation. I hope this was helpful and informative. I will be back again tomorrow with my normal scheduled standard deck lists. I did want to take the time, though, to make this because I thought it was really important. Again, standard rotation is very complicated, even to myself. So I thought it'd be really important to sit down, analyze it, break it down, and really look at what's going to be changing in standard moving forward for myself as well as you guys. And so I hope this helped. And with Edge of Eternity is only, what, 9 days away from being released. I felt like it was really important to talk about. So hopefully moving forward, we'll get our standard videos coming out for the rest of this week and next week until early access. But I hope you guys have been enjoying the content. I know this is always weird for me to post these kind of videos because I never know how they're going to do or how it's going to be perceived or taken. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Liking the video would help a lot to find out if you guys really did enjoy it or not. And I know with standard being a little bit more stagnant with new cards coming out, people have, the interest is kind of going down on that for the time being until the new cards come out. So I thought it'd be a good time to do this. So thank you so much for watching and making it all the way to the end of the video. It means the world to me. And yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow, man. I'll start working on some deck lists right now, and hopefully we'll have something interesting for you guys tomorrow. It might be leaning a little bit more into the competitive nature, like maybe some more meta decks for right now, because I really do want to try to finish out this month strong and maybe even get into a qualifier next month. I've yet to do something like that, so I think that'd be really fun, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see. We'll probably just do something silly as usual. But anyways, we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace out.